Don't you love it when arrogant egomaniacs are hoisted on their own petards? FBI Director James Comey and Deputy Director Andrew McCabe now know the pain of those petards. The Department of Justice is investigating Andrew McCabe now after an Obama-appointed IG made a criminal referral. And pompous Cardinal Comey is now being investigated for leaking classified information. And Comey's memos were released this week, and they were supposed to lay out the real reason for his firing. That Donald Trump was colluding with the Russians, and Donald Trump was looking to obstruct justice. Well, unfortunately for the Democrats and the mainstream media, they prove just the opposite. And they go against virtually everything that Comey has said about Trump. Now, because he didn't trust the president, Comey made notes of his presidential meetings. The memos were written contemporaneous with the meetings, one within 5 minutes of the meeting. Contemporaneous notes carry great weight because they're made almost immediately after the event when the memory is fresh. But unfortunately for Jim Comey, they do not support his narrative. In fact, they prove the opposite. They prove, one, that the president encouraged the FBI director to investigate the issue of collusion between anyone on the Trump campaign and Russia. Number two, the president encouraged the FBI director to investigate the Steele dossier. And number three, the president wanted to make sure that his administration was free of leaks. And here's the rub. The meeting with the president by Comey was a setup to allow CNN to go forward with a negative story about the president and to create the illusion of Russia collusion. Comey himself admits to the president CNN wants to go forward with a story because some leaker gave them the dossier. But there needs to be a news hook. So the meeting for the discussion about the dossier would be the hook. And 4 days later, CNN had the story that Comey told the president about that salacious dossier. And Comey himself was the one who created the hook. But, folks, it gets even better. James Clapper, the man I told you last week that Jim Comey said he admires most in government, who we already know is a liar based on his "we don't spy on Americans," well, not wittingly at least. Clapper told Comey to meet with the president to speak about the dossier. Comey is dumb enough to admit it in the memo. He then says, this is Comey speaking, "I then executed the session exactly as I had planned. I said the Russians allegedly had the tapes involving him and prostitutes in Moscow so that they could lend credence to the hyped-up Russia collusion investigation." Trump, however, interjects, saying, "There were never prostitutes." Comey lied and said the FBI is keeping a close hold on that dossier, so there would be no excuse for it to expose this story. So let me make it real simple. Clapper tells Comey to meet with the president to alert him about the prostitutes, which is a pretext to create a news hook so that CNN can leak the story about the prostitutes. But once Comey is fired, he decides he's going to leak information to get to the New York Times now that the Department of Justice is looking at that leak of classified information.
My judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square, and so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel. And so I asked a close friend of mine to do it.
Jim, you're the head of the FBI. You told the president in that memo repeatedly, your memos, that the president wasn't under investigation. You get fired. Now you need to put things in the public square to get a special counsel? Why? Your memo, the first one, was actually sent to the FBI, to McCabe and company. And since there clearly wasn't anything criminal in that memo, then what's with your hogwash about your need to get information into the public square to get a special counsel appointed? Jim, it's so obvious. You're fired and you're mad. You're a liar and you're a leaker. You're pompous, you're egotistical, you're condescending, and you violate the very laws that you're sworn to uphold because you want to make news, because you want to write a book, because you want to be a hero, and because you don't think the rules apply to you, and because you, like your friend McCabe, according to the Inspector General, do it for personal gain. Newsflash. You didn't have a right to leak that information. Once you took those memos out of the building to leak to the New York Times, you, James Comey, committed a crime. You had no right to do that. They were not personal notes. They were not memos to yourself. They were memos to other FBI agents. And if Donald Trump needed investigating, Jim, answer me this. Why didn't you investigate him when you were the highest-ranking law enforcement official in the nation? Why? Because there was no investigation that was needed, and it was secondary in any event. It was phony. You needed to make yourself the protagonist. And now we know that but for those memos and your illegal leak to the New York Times, Robert Mueller wouldn't be doing what he's doing, and that is tearing at the fabric of this country. And ain't it bittersweet irony, Jim, that both you and McCabe are being looked at for the same thing that Hillary was looked at? You're in the same boat as she. But you let her loose because you said she didn't intend to have classified information on her server. But, Jim, you hoisted yourself on your own petard when you made it clear that you intended to release those classified memos so that you could get even with the president. You established the intent that you say was missing in Hillary's case. Jim, the FBI's not proud of you. You're a former FBI director out there discussing matters presently under investigation as a special counsel is doing that very thing. Where do you come off publishing a book about issues under investigation, even admitting that what you leaked was secret and therefore classified? But you protest. I don't do sneaky things. I don't leak. I don't make weasel moves. Jim, are you schizo? On the one hand, you lie to the president that you don't leak, and the whole point of the memo was to leak it. And now on your book tour, you say, it's true. I am a leaker. And Jim, you're a political operative too. You wanted Hillary Clinton to be president. You even changed the definition of the law to let her get away with it. And you played along with Loretta Lynch so that she could get away with it.
Do you think we'd be a lot better off with Hillary Clinton as president than Donald Trump?
Certainly, given her commitment to our traditions and our norms and our values and the rule of law, yes.
Her commitment to the rule of law? Jim, you also have to keep your facts straight. The same day you said Hillary would be a better president, you demur and say it's too hard to go back in time and answer whether she'd be a better president when asked a few hours earlier. Jim, do your answers depend on the time of day or on medication? Jim, it isn't working. You're trying to look like an objective individual until you again admit that you're not.
I see the Republican Party, as near as I can tell, reflects now entirely Donald Trump's values, which is it doesn't reflect values at all. It's transactional. It's ego-driven. It's in service to his ego.
So she'd be a better president. But, Jim, you need to be careful. You need to be very, very careful. You knew from the get-go that you were going to cut Hillary loose, and you knew from your time in the Obama administration that you would go after Donald Trump. You've deceived the American people. And as a result, you, the director of the FBI, are under investigation for leaking classified information. You could be looked at for theft of government property, obstruction of justice yourself, and a clear abuse of power. And if I were a betting woman, I'd bet that your friend Clapper is another one soon to be under investigation. And the bittersweet irony for all Americans is that we will be able to watch you fight each other. Andrew McCabe, who says you told him repeatedly that it was okay to leak to the Wall Street Journal, and Loretta Lynch, whom you accused of pressuring you not to call Hillary's case an investigation. So now, folks, the whole idea of Russian collusion with the Donald Trump campaign fades into obscurity. We now know And we now see the deep state doing what it does best. State actors protecting each other and like-minded members of the system. But if there's any justice and the Department of Justice is independently run, you'll all be made accountable. And finally, Jim, you've done more damage to the FBI as an institution than J. Edgar Hoover, because your mission was to change the course of American presidential history. The only difference between you and J. Edgar is that he wore dresses. And even if you wanted to, you probably couldn't get one to fit you at 6 feet, 8 inches. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, #JudgeJeanine.